past in Britain.
We need not lose our identity completely.
During the war, I rested my trust in the British people. Time after time, I warned them of the dangers ahead.
Which I know very well, so I've lived in London most of my grown-up life.
And I think he just continues to incite hatred and prejudice, and I think he should apologise.
I don't want that. Do you?
I wish they'd get out of my way.
We should say no to it. And I will.
So just all over the place.
I think it'll be very dull, and people would all be squashed together so much there won't be any fun or anything. I think it's going to be very boring. And everything will be the same. I mean, people will be the same and things will be the same.
But if you look at the ideology of Islam and you look at the ideology of Nazism, they are exactly the same side of the same coin.
The expression Islamophobia has, surprisingly, been around since the 1920s. It's only in the last 20 or 30 years, though, that it has become something which is generally discussed and worried about.
So you think ISIS is a crisis? Okay, let's just take Bashar and Bibi and put them behind us, and oh, what about those demons inside us? We invade and destroy Iraq like, don't mind us. You want to flip out when ISIS carries out crimes in the name of God, but what about the drones and the bombs that we drop a lot on villages? We receive images of children in little bits and pieces in the name of freedom and peace. It's mind-boggling how we condemn in others what we condone in ourselves.
We seem to convince ourselves that all of a sudden if we bomb Syria and bomb Iraq and we bomb ISIS, we're going to get rid of this ideology. We're not. That mindset and ideology is flourishing in parts of this city right here, across Birmingham, across Luton, across London, across the country, unchallenged as well.
It is often muddled up with racism, which is a pity because the two things are wholly distinct from each other. The reason that this has happened in Britain is, of course, because the great majority of Muslims in this country are of Pakistani, Bengali or Sylheti origin.
If you want to stop the violence, then you can't make exceptions. If you want to stop the violence, then stop selling the weapons. Lockheed, Northrop, and Raytheon instigate by funding speakers spreading instant hate so they can profit. If you want to stop it, then stop them. No more solutions involving let's just bomb them.
This is another part of our jigsaw put finally in place, and it will bring more and more private investment into the town.
It's obviously a good thing. Why has it taken so long?
Everything takes time in building new towns. You've got to put each piece of the jigsaw into the place when you can get the money.
And another clever thing about its design is that as Telford expands, so the station can expand. We've built it in anticipating that Telford's going to grow, and we want to grow with it.
We've now got intercity trains running right into the heart of our town centre.
We can't stand to see men in ninja outfits chopping off heads. What's the difference between a plane and a blade when both leave people dead? What's the difference between killing you support and killing you're against?
Just so everyone knows, yeah? We've had 200 names of men who have raped children. With free reign. They don't even have to look over their shoulders. The purpose, for me, the purpose in these films is so these men have to look over their shoulders. Selling their fucking drugs, yeah? What's happened to us? What's happened to our men? How can the daughter of one of us be raped, prostituted and pimped while they profit and they still live in Telford? If the police are not going to prosecute them, we are going to fucking embarrass them. I can't understand how the police, you're going to watch on this film, it's about raising awareness. We don't want to raise awareness. We want the men fucking prosecuted. There's going to be no closure until these men are in prison. Bugsy, Charlie Khan, Bugsy, Charlie Khan, I know you're watching. Bugsy, Charlie Khan. I am going to name and shame every fucking one of you. So Telford Police, what you're going to see on this documentary, in this film, is a total failure. Still right now, a total failure. From not protecting victims. Do you know what they've done? When the victims go to the police, I mean, we've got secret recordings. You're going to see series 1, yeah? We've got multiple series already, right? What you're going to hear is going to devastate you. Because you're going to hear victims of sexual exploitation, victims of rape, begging the police for help, begging them for safety. Do you know what the police did? Do you know what they done? They purposely left them in harm's way. Do you know why? Because when their houses get attacked, and when they're targeted, what do? They withdraw their statements. So then the police get exactly what they wanted. No prosecutions and no cases. And then I realised I was sitting and speaking to the victims, the survivors, that it doesn't do them justice. So I want each girl to tell their story. Telford has a 1.7% Muslim population. That means there's 3,500 Muslims in Telford. 3,500. There's 1,000 victims in Telford. 1,000 victims. If you take the 3,500 Muslims and you get rid of the women, you have 1,750. If you then get rid of the under 16s and the over 70s, you've got 1,000 Muslims. The police inquiry identified 200. The independent inquiry has identified 350. That means between 20 to 35% of the Muslim men in this town are raping our kids. The only towns we have numbers on are Telford and Rotherham. Rotherham has a 3.7% Muslim population. What do you think it's like in towns like Luton or Birmingham?
I think that most people know very well that Muslims can be white Europeans, Albanians or Bulgarians, for instance, Arab, Indian, black or Chinese. Although it has its origins in the Arabian Peninsula, it's not an ethnically exclusive religion like Hinduism.
For example, we can see a number of things where the similarities occur. Most people think that they can practice their religion freely. Most people believe that they belong to Britain. They've got an emotional attachment to it. Then we see the gap emerging in our chasm, and we can find a number of things which are really striking. For example, when it comes to polygamy, 1 in 3 Muslims think it's acceptable to have more than one wife. Only 1 in 10 members of the wider public agree. But then we get real substantive differences. When it comes to homosexuality, for example, only 1 in 5 Muslims thinks that homosexuality should be legal, but 4 in 5 members of the wider public think that that should be the case. And when it comes to sensitive matters around political violence and indeed suicide bombing, well, 4% of Muslims would have some sympathy for both those things as against only 1% of the wider public. That could mean no more than a handful.
Britain is booming.
And let's just put that into context for a second. 4% implies that just over 100,000 Muslims in the United Kingdom have some form of sympathy with violent acts.
One is Nadia Hussain, the hugely popular winner of the Great British Bake Off. What could be more quintessentially British than the victory celebration of her traditional victorious sponge on a stretch of England's green and pleasant land?
But just 15 minutes away from where Nadia grew up, here we are on the forecourt of Luton Station. And those are the gates through which 4 men passed to commit the worst atrocity on British soil in recent memory. the 7/7 bombings. It is, of course, just a twist of fate that two of the most famous images of British Muslims are linked to Luton.
When it comes to using public services, Muslims believe that they would be treated in exactly the same way as any other member of the British public when it comes to things like encounters with the police, with the courts, using health services. There's a mainstream Muslim majority who have the same values, the same attitudes, the same behaviours as the wider British public at large.
Because Islam has accordingly come to be associated, in Britain at least, with dark-skinned people from the Indian subcontinent, it has seemed quite natural to lump it together with racism and assume that those who mistrust or dislike Islam must be motivated by religious hatred. This is, of course, quite absurd and typical of the dishonest tricks played by the race lobby in this country.
But they've seen it now, and that's true.
But few people seem to notice this. It might be because Islam has become such a prominent religion in Britain over the years that it has aroused hostility.
We can't kill and kill and kill and think that it helps.
We need to kill them.
We can't condemn in others what we condone in ourselves. Yes, I'm Muslim. Yes, I'm biased based on the fact I know people overseas that are lifeless because rockets and shells have become part of the climate. Instead of clouds and shade, the sky buzzes loud with drones and rain of hellfire, leaving pain in the stain of blood on clothes and scattered bones. Every single drone rocket fires a couple more points on the Dow Jones. I'm just hoping what I say can help. We can't condemn in others what we condone in ourselves.
As Her Majesty warmly welcomed the dignified Middle Eastern ruler. Present on behalf of the government were the Prime Minister and some of his colleagues. Among other members of the royal family greeting King Faisal were the Duchess of Gloucester, Princess Marina and the Duchess of Kent.
Cutting an animal's throat so that the blood is immediately drained from the body is not an agreeable process, but it's no worse than what goes on in more traditional slaughterhouses. I've seen chickens having their throats cut and then being dropped before they're dead into boiling water. All killing of animals for food tends to be bloody and unpleasant.
Look, I'm not saying that this is your fault, but I am saying maybe you should apologize, especially since supposedly it's my fault the latest assault on the lives of husbands and wives that took place on the other side of the planet. Somehow it's connected to me, even though I didn't plan it. If we, Muslims, have to apologize for the four-letter word that's pissing off the world, then you have to apologize to those who colonize, those who occupy and terrorize, and apologize for the lies fed that led to the thousands that died in Iraq for so-called weapons of mass destruction that you couldn't find. Do we have a deal? I'm sorry if you feel uncomfortable, that's just cognitive dissonance. Yes, I look different. I'm the son of an immigrant. You and I both. What a coincidence.
Can you get me a solicitor? Can you get me a solicitor? Can you just turn off your light? Can you get me a solicitor?
He's out on the street telling the truth about Muslim immigration and Islam.
A thorn in the side of the establishment.
That talking about enemies sounds a little un-English. In today's world, we like to pretend that we are all of us reaching out and trying to understand each other and increase the amount of friendship. Enemies, indeed.
Now, don't tell me I'm defending ISIS because they killed thousands more Muslims than Western journalists.
The fact is, though, that Britain does have enemies. These are not the Russians or Chinese, although it would be a rash person who asserted that those nations are precisely our friends. The real enemies of Britain are the quislings and fifth columnists who work from within against the country's interests.
Isn't it odd how we condemn in others what we condone in ourselves? The first thing you need to comprehend is that war is profitable, so let's pretend, isn't it possible that we aren't at war for defense but for dollars and cents, and differences are exploited, and all of these events in the media are leading you to a fight you never wanted? Does any of that make sense?
The ones who tell pupils that they live in a racist society and that black people in Britain have been given a raw deal. This is so obviously a lie, because those black people who came to this country did so because they would be better off. And this is demonstrably true when you look at conditions in Africa and the Caribbean. together with the fact that black people are not leaving Britain to go to those places.
The more we ignore this fact, the worse it gets. Where was the shock when Bashar dropped barrel bombs on civilians in Syria? Where was the constant media, and why are they feeding you their fake concern for civilians now?
Because by trying to destroy our history, they are doing their best to make young British people feel bad about the past and consequently unwilling to be patriotic in the present.
Bashar killed 200,000 before ISIS came to town. Why do we pick and choose which evil is necessary to fight?
I don't believe that Islamophobia, which has been defined as the fear or prejudiced viewpoint towards Islam, Muslims and matters pertaining to them, is at all the same as racial prejudice. But there is no doubt that just as some people have Jews on the brain, so too do others have Muslims on the brain.
Why do we only march for Christians and whites but not the black or brown, the Muslim, Arab or Kurd? Some blood is as cheap as dirt. We can't condemn in others what we condone in ourselves. Why are we so mad that ISIS is killing? Didn't Israel just slaughter 500 children last summer?
To this group belong almost the entire middle class in this country. The Guardian readers, the academics, the intellectuals and all the rest of them. Together, whether or not they know it, they have conspired to sabotage their own country from within and sap confidence from the ordinary population.
Why is that not chilling? Why are we willing, why are we okay to pay dollar and shilling for the slaughter of mothers and daughters, but we can't stand to see men in ninja outfits chopping off heads? What's the difference between a plane and a blade if both leave people dead? What's the difference between killing you support and killing you're against?
Of a non-Muslim. At first sight, Anjum Anwar presents an unlikely figure in Blackburn's Anglican Cathedral. She's a devout Muslim.
There are certain areas which are wholly Asian and some would be wholly white areas. So if you have a child who goes to a school which is wholly Asian, who lives in an area which is predominantly Asian, where would that child meet children and people of other faiths? They're restricted, aren't they?
My point is that all life is sacred. So stop with all the hatred, because blood is still blood, no matter how you try and paint it. We can't condemn in others what we condone in ourselves.
People will be the same, and things will be the same. And people will be rationed to the amount of things they can have, because if they had too many things, it would just squash their houses, and there just wouldn't be room for them.
The abundance of trash. What are we going to do with it? Are we going to put it on an island? Are we going to make it somebody else's problem? Or are we going to take the initiative and take this problem by the horns? Trash economy. You use cubes of trash as money. Everybody becomes rich. It's a gold rush.
What kind of country?
Refreshment from start to finish.
The finding of truth and freedom.
If you want to change something, you have to be a part of something. You have to get involved, you have to educate yourself on it, and you have to make a change from inside. It's all good and well having opinions saying no one listens, but if you're not there to be listened to, who's going to listen?